The air was cotton candy and popcorn. The mood was light. Children did as children did, running and jumping and laughing and crying and fighting at varying intervals, sometimes all at once. It was summer. The carnival was in town. Along the riverbank, the traveling carnival crew had worked for 3 days to set up the booths, stages, fences, and rides that composed a Corallin Carnival, an event that was looked to with glee by the entirety of the town at the dawn of August each year. The carnival wasn't much, really, when you looked at it. 3 rides, a few vendors, and a couple of those terrible games that you knew were rigged but played anyway. But to the small town of Corla, it was everything. One of the only events that brought out every face in town. That included Daisy Duthie and her son. Alan. Daisy lived the lonely life of a soldier's wife and had the unfortunate task of being both mother and father, at least some of the time. One of those times was tonight. For weeks, Alan had asked and asked if he could go ride the plunge, the carnival's roller coaster, and after he'd got assurance that yes, he could, and yes, he would, he'd ask again within hours, either because he wished to confirm or because he forgot the answer. Alan, an inquisitive, adventure-seeking type, he also claimed to know all the dinosaurs and where to find them, had just turned 6 and was finally tall enough to gain entrance to the ride. He'd made sure of it by measuring himself, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day against the benchmark line he drew onto the wall in the kitchen. He couldn't wait. Daisy, on the other hand, couldn't wait to be done with the whole thing. She hated all rides, let alone a carnival roller coaster, and prayed that by some miracle her husband, a lieutenant, would return and relieve her of her father duty, but it was in vain. On the first night of the carnival, Daisy had to work late. It was still Thursday after all, and there was no way she could get out of work to go to a carnival, even if she wanted to. Alan was prepared for this and knew that he'd have his chance to take the plunge tomorrow. He waited up for his mother to get home that night. He wanted to know if she drove past the carnival, how long the line for the ride was. When the bro-beaten woman of 34 walked in the door, Alan knew that something was amiss. "What is it, Mom?" he asked, sparing even a greeting. He held his breath that whatever it was wouldn't stand in the way of him riding that ride. "I'm just a little sick is all. Been a long day." "Why aren't you in bed?" she said, tossing off her shoes and plopping on and into the couch. "I will. I just couldn't sleep. I can hear everything," Alan said excitedly. It was true. The carnival down the hill along the river within a stone's throw away from the Duthie house. "But I'll go to bed now. I was just waiting for you to get home. We can still go tomorrow, right, Mom?" "We'll see, Alan. You're a good boy. I promise we will get there tomorrow or Saturday. Now go brush your teeth so I can tuck you in and go to bed." The next morning, Alan prepared breakfast for his mom in the hopes that it would make her feel better. It wasn't much, a glass of orange juice, toast, and a Pop-Tart, but Daisy was delighted. But it didn't help. Daisy had a fever and couldn't stand to get out of her bed for more than a few minutes at a time. Not only was the carnival out of the question, she even called out of work. Alan, although growing restless, didn't seem to mind. He loved his mom and knew that she did everything she could for him. The least he could do was wait for her to get better. Still, that didn't stop him from staring out the window and down the block to the lights and the spectacle of the second night of the carnival. On the 3rd day, Daisy felt compelled to reward this good behavior by taking the trip down the block, no matter how bad she felt, and she felt even worse than the day before. But she couldn't get out of bed, having fallen asleep again shortly after heating up dinner. For Alan, she wasn't hungry. The boy stirred back and forth, wondering if and when to wake her. A million questions racked his brain as he pondered the dilemma. Maybe Mom is really sick and I should let her sleep. Maybe she'll be mad if I wake her up and we won't go anyway. Maybe the carnival won't come back next year and I'll miss it for good. Finally, around 9:30, Alan put on his favorite shirt and his nicest shoes and darted out the door. His mother, startled out of her slumber by the slam of the door, called after him. She planned on yelling at him, but couldn't. She knew she owed this. She got dressed. After they left the house, Alan ran off again. Daisy, struggling to keep pace behind him, found her yelling. "Wait for me at the light, Alan Joseph," she yelled, straining every muscle in her throat. The boy stagged his shoulders and turned around upset. "Hurry up," he moaned, forgetting her fever. The pair arrived a minute or two late and went to buy tickets. There, Alan saw a boy, Timothy, he knew from school. The parents exchanged pleasantries, and Timothy's mom, whose Daisy's liked, asked if she was feeling okay, while Alan replied the news to his friend. He was taking the plunger. Timothy, who was leaving, told him to hurry, that the rides were closing soon. Alan tugged at his mother's shirt with his little candy-stained paws and got to the line. Only there was no one in line, only a distracted man sweeping beneath the seats. "Sorry, ride's closed," he burped when he noticed the pair. Alan started to cry. This he was not prepared for. To get so close to the plunger only to be turned away, it was a terrible shock to his little body and shattered his fragile heart, and his mother's too. She looked for empathy and for recourse. The sweeper told her that he didn't have the key to launch the ride anyway. Eventually the man, a boy really, he couldn't have been much older than 16, who did have the key, returned. "We can let him on, it's alright," he said, clearly taken aback by this scene. "But you gotta ride with the little man." Alan, as happy as he was by the sudden reversal of fortune, didn't like hearing that last bit. He was almost 7, but in a matter of seconds his grievance was forgotten. He was finally going to take the plunge. Daisy, pale in the face except for her stuffy red nose, looked distraught, not to mention disheveled, sleep-deprived, exhausted, sick, and now confronting fears. She hated roller coasters. Alan reassured her that it would be alright, over before she knew it. She cupped his tiny hand. "Hold on tight," advice directed as much to him as to herself. The man tightened the belt. Daisy thought it felt loose. He said they'd be fine. With the push of a button and a turn of a key, they were off. The cart began to build speed after a trio of short inclines and subsequent descents. Then, with almost no warning, they were moving. Herking and jerking, riding and gliding, they rolled and they made turns, both sweeping and sudden. They looped and whizzed, and finally built up to the climax, the big drop, the plunge. Daisy, not at all enjoying herself, hid terror behind her eyes. Something was wrong, that she knew, or at least she felt it deeply, instinctively. The cart they were riding was rickety, and it just felt wrong. This was why she hated roller coasters. She had no idea if her terror was justified or if she was just overreacting. It was the same story every time. Alan, for his part, was in bliss, laughing and yelling, fearing nothing, not danging to fight his mother's grip. He tried in vain to put his hand in the air. Daisy turned and looked at her boy. It meant the world to see him smile. She was sure she'd shed a tear of joy if she wasn't so damn scared. Finally, as the cart was looking down on the entirety of the carnival and the river to their right, Daisy mustered the only word she could: "Hold on tight." And then, in an instant, it was over. The tumbling crash of metal, revealed only by the smooth splash of water. Alan, for his part, holding on until the very end. Many months had passed without the removal of the carnival setup. There was an ongoing investigation being conducted into how such an outrageous accident could happen. Some theorized it was deliberate, others cited mismanagement. One rumor was the ride simply wasn't designed to run for so many hours without a rest. The only thing that people seemed to agree on was that the ride was haunted, that the mother and child, unrecovered from the water, would doom any who trespassed in the park to that same fate. It was nonsense, of course. There were no ghosts, and Nick and Vin were going to prove it. They had managed to bring out a collection of the town's most daring youth, despite the chilling air of mid-December. Their plan had brought out little Tim, a scooter-obsessed Fargo-Bond Max and Jess, the only couple that had lasted more than a few weeks in their 6th grade class. Max's little brother, Ruby, a former classmate of Alan's, and Dom, who thought no one could ever seem to remember his name, always managed to get himself involved in whatever mayhem was being plotted. This time, the plan was simple. Tim's older brother had the only other key to operate the ride. He was away at college. Tim was to go into his room and grab it. Vin knew where their dad kept the pliers. He had cut a small hole into the wire mesh fence. Everybody else simply had to show up. At midnight, they would take the plunge. One by one, the group of deviants made their gathering spot beneath the willow tree, the only one in town that was the usual meetup spot whenever something bad was about to go down, and they didn't want to stay there too long and risk blowing the spot. That's why they had to leave Ruby behind, who was nowhere to be found. Turned out he went home and fell asleep. He was sick. Vin's squirrely little madman that he was got to work on the fence. Within minutes, they were in. There was a thin layer of snow on the ground, and it was only after succeeding in their trespassing that anybody made this observation. Oh well, they were already past the point of no return. It was dark and cold, and as far as anybody could tell, not a single car had passed by. They decided to explore a bit. It was crazy. Just months before, the carnival was a part of their lives every summer. A happy memory. Now it was creepy, distant. When Tim had his fill of exploring, he ran over and put his key in the ignition. As the other remaining cars moved into position, it let loose a hiss. At the sound of it, the others came running. Soon all of them were on board and buckled in. They were off. It was at this point that Nick realized just how cold it was, feeling it waft past his face as he ascended into the river air. He wondered if he was scared. Then he wondered if the others were scared. Nobody talked at first except for Max, who had to prove to Jess that he wasn't scared. But the ride passed by without incident. As they were on their way back to the starting point, Tim asked, "You guys hear that, right?" Nick asked what he was talking about. Vin said he didn't hear anything. Max told him to shut up. "No, I'm telling you, I heard something," he repeated. Then, without warning, the cart began to move again. "Stop it!" Nick turned around to look at him seriously this time. "Wasn't me," he pleaded. Terror swept across all 6 faces. This time they all heard it. Right before they took the plunge, Max, no longer so tough, began to cry. They rolled around into the finish once more and began pulling at the restraints to get off. Nothing. In a moment, they were off once more. This time they were all screaming, hoping they'd be found, hoping they might live. This was more than any of them had signed up for, even Dom, who started crying too. At the top of the descent, as they readied for the plunge, they heard the voice again. "Hold on tight, hold on tight, hold on tight." And they did. Hey guys, thank you for listening to today's Creepypasta, and I hope you enjoyed. I do have a podcast called The Murder House Radio Show. Check it out. The link will be in the description below. If you like, comment, subscribe, and share for more. Hit the bell notification when you subscribe and select all to get all notifications whenever I upload. I upload 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday, at least one video a day. Also, go follow all the social media accounts. They are also in the description below. As well, in the description below is a source to the creepypasta and the music used, so go check those out. Let me know what creepypasta you'd like to hear next, or if you have your own creepypasta you'd like me to narrate, or give me a good creepypasta series. Those are always good as well. Send them to me on any of the social medias, in the DMs, or to the email address, which is also in the description below. As well, in the description below is the author's social medias, if they have any. But yeah, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Until next time in the Deadly Zone, stay deadly and stay spooky.